Annie Leibovitz. In 2007, Annie Leibovitz was hired by the Walt Disney Company to take portraits of famous actors dressed as Disney characters. The goal was to bring these characters to life even more so than Disney was able to do in the past. With the help of modern technology, Leibovitz was able to take portraits in front of blue screens and bring these characters to life. After spending some time looking at these photos and this portfolio, it became obvious to me that Leibovitz had taken her love of portrait taking to an enchanted level. By using her inspiration, Henri Cartier-Bresson's style, she was able to apply this in ways we would have never thought to. As I looked through these images, I initially saw excellent use of color and lighting. Another thing that I noticed was that all of the images had obvious subjects. One of my favorite images, though, would have to be the Russell Brand as Captain Hook that you will see later on in the slides. This image not only speaks to me because it's comical in nature, but because it is one of the only images from this portfolio that uses natural lighting instead of artificial lighting. Overall, this portfolio is simply magical. It captures the characters and their personalities perfectly if you're familiar with the characters. The amount of time and detail that went into these photographs was well worth it in my personal opinion. Leibovitz was able to capture exactly what Walt Disney Corporation wanted in her own personal way. I find it amazing that she was able to use her love of portrait taking to create an entire portfolio of made-up characters so perfectly. In the end, it all comes together so well, not only because of her talent for photography and her eye for it as well, but because of her love for the characters and the actors portraying them. One of the men who influenced Annie Leibovitz was Henri Cartier-Bresson. Henri was a French humanist photographer and was considered the master of candid photography. He also helped develop street photography. Leibovitz took a liking to Cartier-Bresson's style of candid shooting and has many portfolios of his style with her family. She also fell in love with his portraits. After seeing many of Henri's portraits and works, she became inspired to create her own works. She began her career by working for the Rolling Stone publication. In the 1980s, Leibovitz was hired by Vanity Fair because of how much they admired her approach to using vivid colors. And because of this, in 2007, she was hired by the Walt Disney Corporation to create portraits of their characters and to help bring them to life. After analyzing and reading about the Disney portfolio, it left me with one answer: perfection. Everyone who saw these works as they were released to the public were nothing but thrilled and excited to see such different versions and varieties of these timeless characters. Annie Leibovitz wanted to do nothing more than to capture the eyes of the children within all of us with every portrait that she took for the Walt Disney Corporation. By pouring her heart and love of photography into these photographs, she was able to transfer that love into masterpieces. This was easily noticeable with the instant positive reactions and feedback that Disney and Leibovitz received from the internet. Initially, when Leibovitz took the job, she knew her images would be noticed simply because she was taking portraits of some of our favorite actors dressed as some of our favorite Disney characters. She simply didn't realize the magnitude of admiration her portraits would receive. Annie was simply taking the photos, yes, for money, but also because she loves taking pictures. And she knew that this would be a fantastic and funny experience for her. With the amount of attention that the first series of portraits received, Disney simply had to hire Annie to create more. And so, in 2008, another set of portraits were released. And again in 2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, and most recently 2014. Disney will most likely keep asking Annie to create these beautiful works of art for as long as they are popular amongst Disney fans. As I stated previously, Leibovitz's work was adored by the masses of Disney fans that were in awe to see the favorite characters come to life via Annie Leibovitz's portraits. Annie was important to the task, though, because she had a background in taking professional portraits for magazines. Disney noticed this about her and approached her with the task of this portrait series. With her eye for lighting and portraits, she began to make the now popular Disney portrait series. The main photographer that inspired Annie was once again Henri Cartier-Bresson. I mention him again because she simply would not be the professional portrait photographer she is today without his inspiration. He gave her the initial push she needed to begin her journey as a professional photographer. For the photo analysis, I chose to move away from the Disney portfolio just for a moment. While comparing Leibovitz's style to Cartier-Bresson's, it was a little hard to see the similarities in one of the Disney images. The first time I saw this image, it immediately made me think of Henry's style. Now, I didn't choose this image simply because it was black and white, like pretty much all of Henry's, but because the expression on the young woman's face and how the lighting hits the one side of her face that we can't see. I also love the definition of her jawbone and how it's symmetrical with the muscle behind her ear. Another feature that stands out is the woman's collarbone. Normally, you wouldn't realize such a feature, but it's clearly visible and one of the main subjects of the image. I also find it interesting that the woman is looking away and to the right, into the light, as you can see the reflection in her eyes. This makes it a little easier to naturally close her eyes and for her to not have an expression on her face. This photograph was clearly taken with Henry's style in mind, though. A portrait that happens to be emotionless, with the only subject being the main and only person in the portrait. Not only that, but she is also looking to the left, over her shoulder, just as the main subjects in Henry's portraits do. Touching on the subject of lighting very quickly, in Henry's images, I noticed that the lighting was very good, shining right onto the subject, causing shadowing behind it or them. While in Leibovitz's case, you can clearly tell that the lighting is coming from the left, and it is casting a shadow onto the subject itself, an interesting personal spin that Annie applied to her versions of her portraits. To me, this simply means that Leibovitz has mastered framing and by doing so is able to focus on the main subject of the portrait or image and can immediately direct our attention to wherever she wants it to be.